Why is everything so complicated for Generation Z? Like, why has finding a suitable career become an increasingly difficult process which leads to failure a lot of the times? Today, we're going to answer exactly why. There are quite a couple of deep psychological and systemic reasons for that, which I'll break down for you right now. Number 1. Choice overload. What is it exactly? While on the surface this might sound like a fancy scientific term, it's something pretty simple and incredibly toxic in practice. Choice overload basically means that there are so many career opportunities and paths ahead of you that you end up completely paralyzed, confused about which one to actually pick. You look in the direction and see people talking about how technology has had a massive impact on the job market recently, so it would only be wise to pursue a career in something like artificial intelligence, machine learning, or anything that has something to do with AI. On the other hand, there are people who try to encourage you to get into content creation, become an influencer, start a dropshipping business, or invest in the crypto market. Then other people might tell you to just stick to the old school method. Just go to college, get a safe degree, keep your head down, and live with a corporate job. While none of these are inherently bad or wrong choices on their own, they absolutely fry your brain because you're young and inexperienced. There are so many claims, so many promises, and so many once-in-a-lifetime opportunities coming your way every single time you open the phone that you don't even know which one to choose. But it used to be different back in the day. Finding your career used to be a straightforward linear process pretty much, and almost everyone had their future completely figured out by their early 20s or so. So the problem isn't that you're doing something wrong or that you're naturally lazy. It's just that times have changed and the landscape is infinitely more complicated now. But how do we tackle this issue? The solution to choice overload is self-imposed restriction. When you have infinite options, your brain refuses to make a decision because it's terrified of making the wrong one. You suffer from the fear of missing out on the other 99 paths. To beat this, you have to artificially limit your own horizon. Think of it like this. If someone hands you a 10-page menu at a restaurant, you take forever to order and you usually regret what you get. If they hand you a menu with 3 items, you pick one immediately and enjoy it. You have to treat your career the same way. You need to pick one direction and completely lock the door behind you for a strict period of time. Let's call it 6 months. For 6 solid months, you go absolutely all in on that one single path, whether that is learning a coding language, making a video, or studying a specific engineering field. You commit to it and you violently reject every other shiny object that crosses your feet. You treat those alternatives paths as distractions, actively designed to make you fail. By giving yourself a hard deadline to evaluate your choice only after those 6 months are up, you eliminate the daily exhausting anxiety of what if I choose wrong. If 6 months pass and it completely sucks, you pivot. But you do it with actual tangible data from your own life experience, not from hypothetical paralysis. You have to stop trying to find the perfect career, because the perfect career is a myth sold to you by people trying to sell courses. You just find a playable path, put your blinders on, and start walking. Number 2, the process of shaping your identity. In the past, this was something that was determined by the outer factors rather than the inner ones. What does that mean? It means that, for instance, people used to pursue a career in the exact same field as their father or their grandfather. Maybe it was a continuous chain and their career was literally a part of their family heritage. This is basically one of most obvious reasons as to why most people had their stuff figured out in their early adulthood back in the day. You wouldn't have to go through the agonizing existential process of sitting down, staring at the ceiling, thinking what you're naturally good at or what you're bad at, looking into hundreds of different career fields, comparing the pros and cons, and trying to align it with your soul. You just grew up to continue what your dad used to do. Like if your dad was the owner of a local shop, the ownership and management of the exact same business would automatically pass on to you by the time your father retired. And the same thing would happen to you and your children. That's how it was back in the day. Your identity was handed to you on a silver platter. But now, the thing that used to be determined by the environment is now basically your sole responsibility to figure out. You have to build your own avatar from scratch. You have to choose what you want to do in the future and live with the massive consequences. And not only do people around you not help with this, they might even actively discourage you or make you have second thoughts about your decisions because they don't understand modern career path. So you have it not necessarily harder, but definitely vastly different and more psychologically heavy in comparison to past generations. So what do we do about this? You have to aggressively decouple your self-worth and your identity from your job title. When outer factors dictated your life, your job was just your utility to the village. Now, modern hustle culture tells us that our job is our soul, our passion, and our entire identity. That's a massive crushing weight to put on the shoulders of a 20-something-year-old. The solution is to flip the script entirely. Build an internal compass of how you want to live rather than what you want to be called. Instead of asking, do I want to be an engineer or a content creator? Ask yourself, what kind of friction am I actually willing to tolerate every day? Do you want a life that is highly structured with clear boundaries so you can log off at 5 p.m.? Or you thrive in a chaotic, self-directed environment where you make the rules but carry all the stress? Do you want to work with complex silent systems, or do you want to deal with human psychology and networking? By identifying your core operational traits, the things you naturally do well when no one is watching, you create a filter. You stop looking at the 10,000 job titles out there and start looking at the actual day-to-day reality of the work itself. Furthermore, you have to accept that your first career choice isn't a blood oath. You are allowed to shape your identity in phases. You aren't craving a permanent statue out of stone. You're sculpting with clay. You can literally smash it and start over in 5 years if you want to. Your job is just how you fund your life. It is not the definition of your existence. Number 3. The future is kinda unpredictable. Let's have a little flashback. Sometime around 5 years ago, AI wasn't as popular and as vastly used as it is nowadays. When people were about to make a massive career-changing choice, they probably weren't remotely aware of the fact that in half a decade, an abundance of things you do manually on your own today were going to be automatically done by a machine in mere seconds. So you wouldn't take this factor into consideration, simple as that. The game world was static, and the same thing stands now. But the timeline is moving faster. You can't just go out to people and tell them, yo, there is this new field of activity which is completely invulnerable to any future tech developments, and you can definitely make a damn lot of money for the next 40 years if you pursue a career in that specific field. Because things just aren't consistent anymore. We can't be sure that what you say today will stand true in 5 years, let alone 10 or 20. So yeah, you have a massive new obstacle in addition to all the other ones, as if they weren't already enough. You are trying to shoot an arrow at a target that is constantly moving, changing shapes, and sometimes disappearing entirely. But the way to tackle this is to fundamentally change what you're actually trying to learn. Stop trying to predict the future, because it is a useless game that will always make you lose. If the digital landscape is shifting every single year, hard coding yourself to one hyper-specific piece of software or one rigid career path is a trap. Instead, you need to build an absolute fortress of meta skills. So what are meta skills? They're foundational psychological and intellectual abilities that transcend whatever technology or trend is currently dominating the market. It is the ability to communicate a complex idea clearly to a room full of people. It's the psychological resilience to have your massive project completely fall apart, and instead of having a mental breakdown, immediately starting to troubleshoot. Most importantly, it is the skill of learning how to learn. If you know how to aggressively research a brand new topic, break it down into fundamental principles, and teach it to yourself practically overnight, it doesn't matter if an AI takes over your specific coding language or your video editing software. It will simply learn how to pilot the AI better than anyone else. You survive the unpredictable future by making yourself the ultimate adaptable generalist. You stop worrying about what specific tools the market will demand in 10 years, and you make yourself so relentlessly resourceful that you can easily capitalize on whatever chaos unfolds. When you're adaptable, unpredictability stops being a threat and actually becomes your biggest advantage. Because most people will freeze when things change and you will just pivot. Number 4. Comparisons. So right off the bat, you might be like, weren't comparisons a thing back in the day? And well, yeah, they were a thing, but in an entirely different way. We don't really want to go in depth about how comparison functioned in the past, since that's not our main concern here. But the absolute main difference between then and now is the existence of a little thing called social media. In the modern world, there's an endless global amount of people showing off and flexing their achievements online 24/7. It gets to a point that even at times when people aren't literally flexing in a direct way, you just make up the flex in your mind yourself. Like, you fantasize about how successful, rich, and happy influencers are, even if they don't directly tell you how much their watch or their car costs. You assume their entire life is a movie. You're practically comparing the known variables of your own life, your boring commute, your empty bank account, your messy room, your self-doubt, to the completely unknown, highly curated variables of theirs. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes footage to their perfectly edited highlight reel, and it makes you feel like an absolute failure before you even start your day. So how do you actually stop this? Telling you to just stop comparing yourself to others is like telling a homeless person to just buy a house. It's completely useless advice when the water is already in your lungs. The real solution requires a radical, almost aggressive detox of your digital environment. You have to internalize the fact that the internet is an illusion curated by thousands of psychological triggers designed specifically to make you feel inadequate, so you keep scrolling and watching the ads. To combat this, you need to curate your inputs with absolute ruthless aggression. Unfollow every single influencer, financial guru, or even real-life acquaintances that trigger the tight, anxious feeling in your chest. Stop consuming the sanitized end results of other people's journey. Instead, if you want to use social media for career growth, only follow people who show the raw, unedited process. Follow the guys who document their failures, their terrible first drafts, their mental breakdowns, and their slow grinds. Better yet, embrace a period of complete digital monk mode. Log off, go entirely dark for a while. When you disconnect from the artificial, hyper-accelerated timeline of success that the internet forces down on your throat, you suddenly realize that you are on your own biological clock. You aren't behind in life because there is no actual race. There's no leaderboard in the sky. There's just you in your room trying to be slightly less confused and slightly more capable than you were yesterday. You have to kill the phantom competitors in your head by simply refusing to look at them. Number 5. Analyze and action. So remember number 1 and the fact that too many choices are worse than limited choices? The reason you have it so hard with too many choices is that you spend a massive amount of time researching, taking notes, taking the pros and cons of every single choice into consideration, comparing them, trying to optimize the absolute best route ahead, and dealing with all that boring theoretical nonsense. But the problem is this: none of these things help you out before you actually take action. Everything else is practically considered background noise unless you actually start doing shit in real life. Let's look at an example here. After a ton of asking around and deep analysis, you come to the conclusion that content creation is your thing. But then you spend so much time on choosing your platform, analyzing your niche, perfectly designing your editing style, and worrying about the rest of the tiny details because you genuinely think that you must have it all figured out before you actually step into the battleground. And eventually you just burn out. You can't even take action because you consumed all your available mental energy on optimizing the process before even starting it. You suffered from perfectionism disguised as productivity before even starting. So the next time you feel like something is your thing, just dive into it without hesitation. Just do it and stop thinking about the best way to do it. And you might be like, what if I do something without prior research? I'm setting myself up for failure. But it doesn't even matter if you fail. Like, you're so young and have so many years ahead of you that a simple mistake or a massive flop in your adolescence or early 20s doesn't change anything in the grand scheme of your life. You're just going through a mandatory trial and error phase. And aside from that, the really good news is this. While I told you to just jump into action without analysis, the analysis just magically appears once you take action. Action produces data. I'll make an example to let this really sink in. Imagine you want to become a YouTuber. So there are two routes ahead. One of them is spending weeks watching hundreds of videos on how the algorithm works or how to get monetized in a month. You basically dedicate 100% of your energy to theoretical analysis and you take absolute zero action. The other route is just uploading a video without any deep thought, without a perfect script, without deep analysis. You just pick an interesting subject, you take out your phone and you press record and you post it. You might, and not only might, but most surely will fail. The video will get 0 views, it will flop. But after that initial failure, you look at the actual real-world result and ask yourself, what part did I do wrong? Was the audio bad? Was the intro boring? How could I make it better next time? And this real-world feedback gradually builds the exact analysis you've been looking for all along. Through raw action and failing forward, you get closer to perfection. The theory doesn't teach you the game. Playing the game teaches you the theory. So stop worrying about the analysis beforehand. It will appear itself the moment you step into the arena. Once again, thanks for watching the video and I hope these solutions came out to be genuinely useful for you. If you have any suggestions, critiques or opinions, share it with me down in the comments. And see you in the next one. Bye for now.